Hey everybody, welcome to Modern Day Debate. Very excited to have you here. So with today's debate, we have a very special format. We have a very special guest, and we have two special debaters.
Why are you here?
One, oh, that's right, I forgot. In case anybody has their volume from, all right, we're set. So basically, the great news is this. The debaters' links are down in the description. You can check out their links so that way you can hear their case straight from them themselves. And second of all, we are glad to have you here. If this is your first time, feel free to hit that subscribe button. We are trying to build a totally eclectic community of different people, different views, Christians, atheists, Buddhists, Scientologists, Jedi, everybody. So with that, just want to say, glad you're here, and want to mention this. If you have a question during this debate, just put an @moderndaydebate in the live chat, and then ask your question and let us know who it's for. And then Samuel, who's going to be moderating, will take your question from the live chat, add it to a document, and ask it during Q&A. Last, super chats. We always forget this. If you have a super chat, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Basically, super chats will be put at the very top of the list, so they will be read first. And then the second thing is, if you do a super chat, you may not only ask a question, but you can make a comment to one of the debaters. The only thing we ask is if you could do us a favor and not make abusive super chats for the debaters. It's okay to say like, hey man, I totally think, you know, ChuBs or Edward dominated. That's okay. Like, we're fine with that. But please don't do something like some sort of personal attack on somebody. That's what I mean. So we don't really usually get that, but once in a while. So with that, I want to introduce Samuel. You've seen him here before. Samuel has debated Pelagia, and that was an epic debate last fall. And so Samuel, we want to say thanks so much for coming on. Everybody, I'm just going to let everybody know that I'm going to basically hand over the moderating duties for Samuel, and he's actually going to be moderating tonight on his own. So I might jump back in, might pop back in if things get really busy, but otherwise, Samuel is going to be taking over the moderating duties for tonight. And so Samuel, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure, James. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So with that, Samuel, as the moderator, the floor is yours.
Thank you, James. And thank you once again for all of you who are tuning in and watching this as well. Look forward to your comments. As James said, you could hit the subscribe button to continue receiving more notifications from us. And also, if you could just add Modern Day Debate to your comments, we, of course, will be a pleasure to read your comments during the 20-minute Q&A section. Now, just let me introduce basically the format for today's debate. There will be a 7-minute opening statements from both sides, beginning with ChuBs first and then Edwards. And then from there, we'll have a 6-minute rebuttal section, followed by a 5-minute second rebuttal. And there we will have a 5-minute cross-examination from both sides before we have a 4-minute closing statement. So that's going to be the format today. We're going to try and stick as religiously as possible with the time, if that's all right. ChuBs, you'll be presenting the affirmative position for the question of today's debate. I should say tonight's debate, but it is daytime here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, where I'm from. But if you're ready, ChuBs.
I'm ready.
All right, time starts. Your 7-minute opening statement starts as soon as you begin speaking.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody who's here. And I want to come at this from the atheist point of view of an everyday person. I did go to 12 years of Catholic school and have been looking into the theology ever since. As everybody knows, you can hear people talk about how atheists are a certain way, and I'm trying to break that mold. As far as today's subject, you know, is it rational to believe in God? I want to come at it as saying, in general, faith is irrational by definition. You know, we need to come at it from, if you're in a relationship in any way, you need to ask an outside person to look at it. And these days, and maybe throughout time, I found that it's believe in God or else the Bible is right or nothing else. And I think we as atheists have been trying to say, well, let's ask all the questions. And throughout time and today, again, we're not getting anywhere by battling over the usual things of evolution and science and morality, and some things we can't prove, some things we're just going to not go anywhere. I want to look at it as, what do we have to do as just human beings to get along and try and find a national? Is it rational for somebody who has a 9-to-5 job and is trying to get through life to come at him and say, you try to show them salvation or add salvation in with what's going on in their life and how it's going to work? I don't think we can look past what's being said. Like, I find when I talk to Christians and they just say, oh, you're wrong. And I say, well, how about we look at how the Bible mirrors other books that came before it? And nobody seems to want to hear it. And I want to try and break that. I don't think we should stop at, like, people don't want to accept I don't know, and some people are coming to that. I don't see us moving forward unless we can examine everything. Sometimes, the more you know, the less you believe, but that doesn't mean we have to throw out all our beliefs. If we look through everything presented, we have to ask, what is the point? I feel you can try and help people using the Bible. I think there is history to the Bible, even a military type history to the Bible. Things did happen, but I've been told in Catholic school that it's a lot of fables. So what if some are fables? Are they all fables? What are we supposed to believe? I think we need to dissect. Everybody has to dissect what's going on, what's being said, and try to appeal to just being people. I see infighting among the religious, and I don't think that's getting anywhere. No, we're not going to get anywhere. But to think rationally, that's what has to happen by, yes, this needs to stop. We need to think. And the most I hear is, oh, well, you're wrong. And I don't want to call this an argument. Debate's okay, but an argument means that somebody's going to win or lose, and that's not even the way we need to answer this. So I hope to just get across that as we are all humans, what is each person trying to say? And that needs to be the solid way to get to other people. If we put everything on the table and talk about it, instead of just saying, oh, well, it's this or nothing. And I see too many debates that get caught up in big words that go over people's heads, and that's not going to help anybody. So, like I said, I want to come as an everyday person, but when given the facts, no, I don't think what's being presented is right. So I want to just come in a peaceful way, and I really hope to get somewhere in this conversation. If we want to call it a debate, that's fine, but not an argument. No winners, no losers. I hope we can help each other throughout this. And that's about it for me. Pass it on.
Well, that's pretty quick from you, ChuBs. There, you've only utilized 5 minutes out of your 7 minutes, so that means we're ahead of time. And Edward, you'll be presenting the negative position to the question: is atheism reasonable? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, your time starts as soon as you begin your presentation.
Okay, so for those of you who are on the fence, and I'm talking to the audience here, as far as belief in God, or you were once Christians and who now consider themselves atheists, I want you to consider the logical conclusions which follow from an atheistic position. The Bible says that the fool says in his heart that there is no God. And in this debate, I'll be attempting to show that atheism is not a rational position. Now, I hear often from atheists, they say that atheism is only a lack of belief in a God or gods, as if that statement or idea existed in a vacuum or a pocket of space. But there are ramifications to that proposition. If you don't believe that there's a God, or if you have a lack of belief in a God, then it follows that you don't believe a designer designed life on the planet. And it also follows that you are left with three other options for life on this planet. Number one, life arose out of necessity from natural or chemical processes. The problem with this solution is that there's no known law of nature, no known process, and no known sequence of events which can cause information to originate itself in matter, which leaves a huge explanatory deficit when looking at the biological information required for life. Number two, that life arose by chance. Now, according to the philosopher of science, Stephen Meyer, when scientists attribute an event to chance, they usually mean there is no good reason to think that the event happened either by design or because of a known physical process that must of necessity generate only one possible outcome, which in this case would be life. Now, the problem with the chance hypothesis in this case is that the odds that biological information arose by chance will be mathematically prohibitive and therefore implausible. The third option is a combination of one and two. And the problem with this third option is that the combination of necessity.
Right, it seems we have lost Edward. All right, you're back.
So you are left with the position that is irrational. So argument number one can be summarized as the following. Premise one, if atheism is true, then life on this planet is due to necessity and or chance. Premise number two, life on this planet is not due to physical necessity or chance. The conclusion is therefore that atheism is not true, which leads me to my second argument. If any of the three solutions were true, that life arose out of necessity from natural or chemical processes and or by chance, you could not account for objective morality. The products of chemical or natural processes and or chance could not produce morality in an objective sense. At the most, you would have social constructs which are subjective in nature. But in an objective sense, there wouldn't be any moral obligations, things that ought to be done, such as respecting others' rights, or things that ought not to be done, like rape or murder. On the atheistic view, human beings are nothing but animals, and when we view behaviors of animals, killing and raping other animals is acceptable. So moral right and wrong are just illusions on the atheistic view. As Richard Dawkins says, there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, no good, nothing but pointless indifference. We are machines for propagating DNA. It is every living object's sole reason for being. So argument number two can be summarized as the following. Premise number one, if atheism is true, then there are no objective moral values or duties. Premise number two, there are objective moral values and duties. The conclusion is therefore that atheism is not true. My third argument builds on this further. If solution one were true, that life arose out of necessity from natural or chemical processes, then humans would have no free will, because we would be products of natural and chemical laws which would dictate our actions and reactions. And it follows from that reason would be useless and not applicable in the process. Why would you need reason if your actions were dictated by natural and chemical processes? Not only would reason not be needed in the process, but it necessarily would be excluded, because the laws of logic and reason are immaterial and not a part of natural or chemical processes, and therefore they wouldn't play a role. What role does reason play in gravity? When gravitational forces pull water to the ground when it rains, rationality and reason play no role. If solution number two were true, that is, if a life arose by chance, and it didn't come about by necessity or by design, then it follows that human reason also came about by chance, which is even more mathematically prohibitive than life arising by chance alone. So the third argument can be summarized as following. Premise number one, if atheism is true, then we don't use reason. Premise two, I'm using reason at the moment. The conclusion is therefore that atheism is not true. Argument number four, atheism also has an explanatory deficit when it comes to intentional states of consciousness. Intentionality is a quality of mental states that consists in their being directed towards some object or state of affairs. For example, I often think about my wife. I think about how beautiful she is and how much I love her. If solution number one were true, that life arose out of necessity, then there will be no intentional states because physical and chemical processes behave in a blind, law-like way, which will preclude such intentionality, which is purposeful and thought out. Second, intentionality presupposes free will. I can choose to think about my wife, whereas physical and chemical processes will be more deterministic and preclude free will. Additionally, if solution two were true, that life arose by chance, which is to say that life wasn't purposeful and it didn't come about by necessity, then it follows that intentional states also came about by chance, which is implausible. My fourth argument can be summarized as following. If true, then we don't have intentional states. But I'm thinking about the absurdity of that idea, which is an intentional state. The conclusion is therefore atheism is not true. Did you say time?
Well, yep, time now. So you finished, Edward, Jess, on the stroke of 7 minutes. So thank you both, gentlemen, for keeping to time. We've just finished our 7-minute opening statements from both sides, both from Chubb and Edward. Once again, you can put in your questions by just tagging us at Modern Day Debate. And of course, we will have 20 minutes of that right after the debate to address those questions by the speakers themselves. So now to the first of our two rebuttal sections, we'll get back to you, Chubbs. The floor, you have the floor and your time starts as soon as you begin presenting.
Okay, thank you. Let me go through some of the points and try and address the best I can. I may not go in the order he presented it, but I'm going to try and hit it here. I like to think that nature itself can be seen in everything. Biologically, yeah, we can see that everything from insect to animal to human, whatever, we're all born and then we die, and it's what we do in the middle. As far as evolution, I've always been able to sum it up real quick. If anybody hasn't seen this, there's a movie called Ghost in the Darkness. They're two male lions, and in this, where they live, they had to go through thorn bushes, and they lost their manes over time to get through the thorn bushes. That's it. Evolution is how things evolve to get along. As far as chance goes, we all are here by chance because through the way we're all born, it takes one little sperm to get in out of the many. So, God or not, we're all here by chance. If it goes to, okay, we're born and now you got free will. If by Christians say, well, you know, if God gave us free will and then we do wrong, that's on us. But I'm also told by Christians, if you look at the Bible, God spoke to a lot of people. Well, why did he need to speak if he gave us the free will to do it? That's pushing on the moralities, and objective or subjective, I feel you're going to get that to that place anyway, because we live in a society that almost all around the world, they keep us in check. If you were only told to be good because of God, that's, you know, that's being pushed by one thing. I can tell you from having children, they have no concept of what a God is at first. We have to tell them, oh no, we don't do this. We don't steal. We don't hurt people. I've seen my youngest, who's under 5, cry because somebody hurts his feelings. I can't even begin to explain to him, well, this is because of God. I have to tell him about his emotions. I don't feel you need some gigantic, God figure to express those morals. As far as a reason, I can't see how anybody cannot look that, okay, if you go and take somebody, like you take life, all life is sacred, and then we won't have any more life and we cease to exist. I've never heard a Christian really address about animals having their own morality, but if they didn't, they would all be extinct because they would just kill each other completely. Everybody can go look. There's a video of a baby that fell in a gorilla cage, and the gorilla took care of the baby instinctively. I I think we just naturally have a way to know what we have to do to keep going. If not, then you you can instill morality, or you can just see it. If somebody steals from you, you feel bad, so you don't do it. If you were never presented God, then the whole world would be crazy. That I don't ever happening. Yeah, I always hear that you're just chemicals, and we all are chemicals. Chemical reactions happen, the bees have to pollinate the flower, etc. But to explain that our chemicals in our brains go off because of something like God, it doesn't make much sense in a rational way. That I can see what's going on in the world. Where I start my car, chemicals start that car, and the reactions happen. I think that's the whole circle of the thing. If you were to try and tell somebody what to do, then you're pushing something on them. If you push God on them, that could get across. But why do we have to go that route? Why does it have to be, well, something is wrong, but God is why? Not, I thought you're supposed to say, well, okay, you've evolved to this state. You're born. You're going to die. What you do in the middle counts.
1 minute.
You can tell people, hey, your morality is going to get you to heaven or your hell. Or if you don't believe in that, what you do is what matters, is what makes you you. That's the nature of it all. That's we've evolved to be this smart. And if that's it depends what you need to get by. And I'll go ahead and end with that.
Oh, thank you, ChuBs, for that. And we're going to have a first rebuttal from Edwards. The floor is yours. Time starts as soon as you begin.
Okay, so I'm just trying to get my head around the arguments. It sounds like he agrees with a lot of my arguments in terms of, that our biology would be, if atheism were true, then we would be nothing but products of chemical and natural processes. Now, my question to him would be that if that were true, then how would we account for objective morality? Now I think I heard him say something about that this is innate in us, that we're, that we have a sense of right and wrong, even maybe some animals, where he mentioned the fact that the little baby fell into the cage and the animal took care of the child. But I mean, from an objective morality standpoint, if atheism is true, I agree with Dawkins that there's no such thing as evil or good. It's just chemical reactions. We couldn't call it evil or good. We could call it that, but from an objective standpoint, it wouldn't be what we would consider objective reality or objective morality, I should say. He also talked about the origin of religion or the origin of our belief in God. Like a child is not born with that knowledge. But I think that that's a genetic fallacy in terms of where we get the idea from. That doesn't, make it true or false where we got it from. That's a question of epistemology. But what we're interested in is ontology, the reality of God. And I don't think that my opponent has really touched on that, on the objective truth or the objective reality of God. Nor has he touched on any of my arguments in terms of the absurdity and the irrationality of the premises and what they lead to if atheism is true. So, yeah, I mean, I don't see where he's going with his arguments. I don't see that he's touching on anything that I have said. And also, in terms of is atheism rational, I don't think that he's touched on that either. So I'll leave it there.
Well, if you only utilize half your time, thank you both gentlemen once again for staying well within the allocated time. We've just finished our first rebuttals from both sides. Fortunately, we will be having a second rebuttal period. Both speakers will have 5 minutes to present their second rebuttal. The floor is yours, ChuBs. Time begins as soon as you start.
All right, thank you. Yeah, sorry if I didn't address all his points, but like I said, I'm trying to come at this without using all kind of big words and things like that. Like we could say objective and subjective morality and evil and good, but I can personally say that I see evil all the time. Serial killers are evil. That's fine. I have seen good, so I know good and evil exist. I don't believe it's rational to say, okay, why are we here? Why are we good? Why do we need to do good? Is it rational to say that religion presents a book that's taking stories from before it was written and that's the way to go? Or is it rational to say what I see in the world is the way it is? We've never seen anybody actually come back from being dead to tell us what's on the other side, whether Jesus existed or not. As far as, so yeah, the rationality of atheism, to be rational is to really think of both sides. Again, if you're coming at it from, okay, it's God or nothing, that sounds way less rational than, okay, I tell you what, I can present it like this. I personally have children. I've told my children both sides. I said, I am an atheist. I do not believe what's been presented. My kids are allowed to choose what they want. And I can tell you some of them have and some of them haven't. But I have to teach them what is the right thing to do. So maybe it is the society being pushed. We have to push it because I don't see God coming down himself. Nothing in the Bible has happened since that book has been written. There's no fiery chariots. There's no people living to be 900. Even if it's all true, nothing has happened since then. We have to be the guide for this. We have to tell people. So I don't care what label you give it. We have to be the ones to do it. I did bring up the animal thing because animals can give the emotions that we have. I know when my dog cries, it's sad. We can see that. Does it know right from wrong? I can't ask it that. But if how about this? And if an alien were to come down, you try and explain God to it, it's probably not going to get it. But if you show that we are good people, I think they're going to get that first. So to me, being rational, if you really want to be rational, God God tends to be an irrational, unknown variable, which humans associate with the value judgment known as God or goodness. To explain it to somebody who has no clue about it, I don't think anybody would rationally go, okay, you think God is presenting this throughout time, everybody's had gods. What makes that God right? Instead of just saying, okay, as a human, we have to do certain things, otherwise we will not exist. So you can, the old saying, if you need a God to tell you not to do wrong, I think it's better and more rational to say, well, I have to do what's right and I know what's right. If
1
you
minute.
want to tell, if you want to tell me that what I do is wrong is going to make me burn into hell or have no, I'm not going to go to heaven, that's not going to me, get it across to people better than being, I guess, a humanist, if you want to use that, and say, no matter what you think happens, this is what you have to do now. So I'll go ahead and end with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chubbs, for that. Now the floor is yours, Edward, for your second rebuttal. 5 minutes. Time starts as soon as you begin. Edward?
Yes, I'm here. Okay.
All right. Okay. Your 5 minute second rebuttal period starts as soon as you start.
Okay. So it sounds like he finally made some, he kind of addressed some of my arguments that time around. So he says that there are such things as serial killers that are evil. So he believes that there are such things that are evil. When dealing with the moral argument, I see this misunderstanding a lot. The argument is not that belief in God is needed for morality. The argument is that the ontological reality of objective morality exists in God. And if there's no God, then there's no objective morality. If atheism is true, there's no moral dimension from an objective sense. Why would you think that inflicting harm on another would have any more dimension, right? Why would it be wrong to be a serial killer? Why would it be wrong to rape if atheism is true? Animals in the animal kingdom, they kill and rape each other, and we don't consider that wrong or evil. So on atheism, why would that be wrong? He says that that we all come from chance. Like we all, when I talked about the options on atheism, that their life could have arose through necessity or through chance or a combination of the two. So he says that that we all come from chance because the sperm reached the egg by chance. But when I'm talking about chance, I'm talking about the origin of biological life. How did that come about? When we talk about there being a designer, because, one of the things you said was that it's a rational way of thinking to look at both sides of the argument. And this is what I feel that atheists fail to do a lot. Like, okay, it's not just that I don't have a belief in God. No, it's more than that, right? So when you logically walk through the steps of atheism, right? If there's no designer, if there's no God, then these other options are on the table. But these other options are implausible. Here's a quote from the book Signature in a Cell when it comes to chance, right? So it says, for protein chains, there are 400 ways to make a 2 amino acid combination, since each position could be any of 20 different alphabetic characters. Similarly, there are 8,000 ways to make a 3 amino acid sequence and 160,000 ways to make a sequence 4 amino acids long, and so on. As the number of possible combinations rises, the odds of finding a correct sequence diminishes correspondingly. But most functional proteins are made of hundreds of amino acids. Therefore, even a relatively short protein of, say, 150 amino acids represents one sequence among an astronomically large number of other possible sequence combinations, approximately 10 to the 195 power. So when we're talking about chance, and this goes back to my original argument, it's mathematically prohibitive and therefore it's implausible. So again, my position is that atheism is irrational. When you really think through where it leads to, logically, necessarily, it leads to irrationality. Talks about reason and his rebuttal. I'm sorry?
1 minute.
But his rebuttal to my argument for reason is insufficient to defend atheism. For argument's sake, let's say reason was applicable if atheism were true. Then it would follow that the concept of reason wouldn't be determined by any necessary match with objective reality, but rather by the effects of biological and chemical processes, history, culture, subjective experience. But in order to defend his position, he would need to appeal to the objective laws of logic, which contradicts his whole position. And again, you're left with irrationality.
10 seconds. Well, we're not getting anything else from Edward at the moment, so I assume the time is up. And that concludes, of course, both our rebuttal periods, the first and second rebuttal period. We now enter into one of the parts of the debate where I'm most excited about. It's the cross-examination. Both sides will have 5 minutes. We'll begin with ChuBs asking the question and Edward to respond only to the questions that he has given. The floor is yours, ChuBs, for your 5 minutes cross-examination. Time starts when you begin your first question.
Okay, thank you. I will go with, he was given a lot about biology. I like to put it where I see that humans have come from all that chance. You're right. Chance, 1 in a million, 1 in a quadrillion. But we see that we have found Neanderthal bones that lead to us. So the biology has happened, chance or not, we have gotten to this point. But is it rational to say that a God did it, or survival of the fittest as it was? We have gotten here because trial and error, because we have found throughout time, we're getting there. Even before the Bible, before anything, we have been fighting our way through it, and teaching ourselves how to act and how to do it is the way we've gotten there. That would be my question.
Okay, so what I would say to that is the theory of evolution has to presuppose the biological information to start the whole process of natural selection. So it can explain the origin of the first life. So it's insufficient. It has a explanatory deficit when it comes to explaining the origin of life.
I have to say, yeah, we all are stumped with where did we come from, but that leads to the question of, okay, we see how we are here now. Do we go with, like, well, nobody has a time machine. We can't go back and see. Religion is going by, okay, we were all told this is how it goes. I don't see it rational to go with that answer, because we can see what's going on right here and now.
Okay, so what's the question?
Oh no, I was just answering your question. Really, that you're right. It's all by chance, and there has to be something that started it. I don't think anybody can say there isn't a start, but religion is giving the options. Okay, it's God did it or nothing, and I
Okay.
can't
All right.
see that being reasonable.
Okay, so let me respond to that. So that sounds sort of like a God of the gaps type of thing. But here's what I would say to that. Like, so my argument is not based on what we don't know. Um, well, we have repeated experience in nature that informs us that intelligence is capable of producing coded information. So going back to what I was saying before about the biological information, right? We have experience in the natural world where we have seen information come from intelligence. So the information found in the DNA molecule is positive evidence for intelligent design. And there's no way around that fact. And so when the atheist rejects the idea of intelligent design, it follows logically that he is left with the alternative that is irrational and implausible.
1 minute.
And it follows from that atheism is irrational and is an irrational position. I mean, you can't escape this conclusion.
I think you're right where you say yes. Everything is amazing and has to be intelligently designed, but the answer that's given of God, there's no examples of that person, or I say person, but you have, like we say, evidence. Give us evidence for God. We can't give evidence either, but I don't think it's rational to go with what's a magical type sense that that religion gives, where God put two people in the jungle and then an ark adventure happened. That doesn't make more sense to me than we can see that people were born and we die and okay.
Well, that's the first part of the cross-examination with ChuBs raising the question. I'm going to reset the clock in just a minute. I'll just suggest here gently that, gentlemen, if you could just raise the question and allow the other side to answer, then perhaps we might have a very productive discussion that way. But then again, that's just a suggestion to you. Your 5 minutes, Edward, starts as soon as you begin.
Okay. Can you tell me your name again? I'm sorry.
I go by ChuBs.
ChuBs. Okay. So ChuBs. So I gave four arguments. And I kind of just want to see if you agree with some of the premises and some of the conclusions that follow. Because one of the things that you said was that it's rational to look at both sides of the argument, right? You agree with that statement?
Correct.
Okay. So when we say that, if someone says that they are an atheist, then it follows that that intelligent design is off the table as an explanation for life. Would you agree with that?
No, I don't think intelligent design is off the table. I don't think God is the answer for the intelligence.
Okay. So I just want to make sure I understand that. So atheism is the belief that it is the lack of belief in a God or gods. So when theists talk about intelligent design, we're talking about God. So when you say intelligence, what are you talking about?
I'm not giving it a title, or I'm not giving it, because again, none of us know what it is. We're given the options throughout our life. Atheists choose religion and think that's the answer, but nobody knows. We can't know that. I see that religion in and of itself has taken its roots from everything before it, mostly Egyptians, and so that's taken from something else. I can't answer where it came from because nobody has a time machine, but to think that God did it, that I don't go with that answer. Okay, so
it sounds to me like, okay, so tell me if you agree with this statement. So it sounds to me that you're more agnostic than an atheist, because
No,
you believe that
agnostic.
there's a.
I go by the definition where atheist is a lack of belief. Agnostics say they don't know. I don't know where the intelligence you're talking about, but I don't believe a God made it.
I don't know. That sounds like a contradiction to me. That sounds like you're kind of hedging. You're saying, well, there's a designer, but it's just not God.
No, I think life, we can look at life and say this is a great design, but just like people say, okay, well, a watch and a car, they all look great and they're designed by something. We can see who created it. We can say that about us, but we can't, none of us can point out the designer. I think I can say life did design itself over trial and error. That's evolution to me. It's tried for so long. We've gotten to this point, but I don't think the designer is what religions say God is.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of Dawkins? He said that he doesn't think that there's a God, but he thinks that possibly aliens planted life on this planet. So that would be sort of what I'm hearing from you, like that, okay, there's a designer, but it's just not God. It could be anything else but God. Am I
My
on track with that?
I my answer for that would be the theory I've heard that I agree with is that something like a comet, which has water on it,
1 minute.
crashed here, and biological life started that way. So not an alien, but again, I don't know what put that in motion, but that's how it started because we find fossils going so far back, we can see how we got by, but that's it. Water can bring life. So what started that life, I still don't know, but I don't think it's God. But so I do agree with that, but not aliens.
Okay, so let me ask you this last question. So do you think that what you just said is rational? That life
I
came from
think that
water?
I think it's more rational than a supreme being.
All right, I'm done.
All right. You guys stopped 15 seconds short of the 5 minute mark. So thank you once again, both gentlemen, for an entertaining debate and I should say as well, a very respectful debate from both sides. We've now come to the closing statements. We have 4 minutes. Both speakers will be presenting their respective closing statement. The floor is yours, chaps. Time starts as soon as you begin.
Thank you. I like where we've gone with this because, like I said, I like being able to ask both sides of the question to make it a rational thought, to have information about both sides so we can come to a conclusion. A lot of times people bash science because they call it a religion when science is just going through the motion of answering the questions. And to answer our questions, we do have to ask each other. To ask about morality gets us closer to making sense of what's right and wrong and why people do wrong. And we can answer that question. We can't answer how life started, but we can fix. If we never tried to fix it, we wouldn't have, come up with things like aspirin and cures for diseases. We don't need to know how the disease started a million years ago. We need to fix what's here now. And I think we need to go through both sides and break it down. And I think ways like tonight is the right start to do it. And I really thank Edward for being here and doing this with me. And I hope everybody, including us, can continue what we started here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for that really quick summary, Chubb. We are going to hand the time to Edwards for your 4 minute closing statements. If you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay. In closing, I will say that my opponent has not shown that atheism is not irrational. In fact, I will actually say that he has proven my point. He basically said he believes in a designer, but it's not God. He says that life could have come about due to a comet hitting the earth and life arising by water or, life arising by chance. Irrationality follows logically from the premises of the position. you would basically need to ignore the implications to conclude that it's not. To recap, I showed that on atheism, you are left with basically three options for life: necessity and or chance, which are implausible. If you were to say that there's another option, such as I don't know, that will fall under the options 1 through 3. I showed that on atheism, we are nothing but animals, and when looking at animals, they kill and rape each other, and it's not considered evil. And so it follows that on atheism, there's no objective moral values or duties, but that just doesn't align with reality. There are things that are objectively evil, and he agrees with that, but it doesn't fit coherently in his worldview. Also, on an atheistic view, reason is not necessary, and in fact would be a miracle that products of natural and chemical processes will correspond to the objective laws of logic. And if atheism were true, intentional states would not exist. It's a contradiction in principle that law-like processes could give rise to free will, which is a prerequisite for intentional states. And lastly, eternal truths exist in an eternal mind, therefore God exists. Therefore, atheism is not true.
Well, I presume that your time, you're finished there, Edward?
Yes.
Well, you finished in half your time allocated. Well, that's fantastic. Once again, thank you to both of you gentlemen for such a wonderful and enlightening debate on the rationality or the reasonability of atheism. Now it's time to hear from our audience. And what I'm going to do is that we have 20 minutes allocated to the Q&A section. I'm not sure if James wants to have a say first. Do you want to have a say first, James, or shall I proceed? So we're having a bit of difficulty listening to James.
Okay, thanks for your patience. Here we are. So very excited. Whew. Basically, what we are going to do is jump right into it. So thanks, Samuel, for your help tonight. And thank you very much for the debaters and for your questions from the audience. We have the list here. Samuel, just to double check, you have the same list from me, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes, it was from your last message. Yeah, I do have that list. Excellent.
So with that, we will start it out with the super chats. Thank you so much, Ronald Mendonca. We totally appreciate your super chat. Really generous. Really appreciate that. So next, we are going to actually read the super chat itself. So here it is. He says, no one knows, or I put emphasis on knows. So no one knows God exists. No one knows God does not exist. Therefore, everyone is agnostic. You have agnostic theists and agnostic atheists. Atheists are waiting for a good reason to believe. That's the reasonable position to take until there's proof of a God. So we usually give the debater who it's directed at a chance to respond. So if you'd like to respond, you, of course, may, Edward. Guess that it's for you, Edward. So.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would disagree with that premise. Knowledge is justified belief, and I would say that we do have proofs of God's existence. And I've argued for some of those tonight, and I also have some more that I haven't argued. Aquinas has argued it. Philosophers throughout the years have argued it. Metaphysical proofs, philosophical proofs. We have biological information in the DNA molecule. I mean, that is evidence for a designer. So I totally disagree with that statement.
So we will be switching back and forth between Samuel and I for the questions. So Samuel, the next question is yours to read. Thanks, bud.
Sure, James. Now, what I'll suggest is, thank you once again, Edward, for keeping the answer so short. If we could continue that way, we could cover as many questions as possible. The next question comes from Ian Charitier, and it's addressed towards you again, Edward. How many sons did God have, he asks, What does it say? Why does it say the sons of God went into the daughters of men? Edward?
Okay, so I think that's a little outside the scope of the debate, but that's okay. When it talks about sons of God, I don't think that it's talking literally about sons from a from an offspring standpoint, but probably more spiritual beings, maybe angels. I can't say for sure, but I definitely don't think that it is dealing with offspring in terms of like the Son of God or the sons of God, um, uh, like Christ. If that answers the question.
All right, we'll take that. James, you want to go with the next question?
You bet. In fact, we just had a super chat come in, so we want to say thanks so much. Forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. I'm sorry. Thanks so much to Sigfrido Sarabia. Very happy to receive that super chat and this interesting question. So he says, how does a loving Christian God hold a title of a God of war or jealousy? My guess is that is for Edward.
A God of war. I would need a reference to that title, the God of War. But when we talk about jealousy,
I think we might have lost your audio there for a second, Edward. Are you still there? Edward? Anyone? Samuel, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you, but I think we've lost Edwards. We just lost Edwards there. Do we still want to wait for Edwards?
Edward is, I think he's coming back. I still see his picture up, so I think he's still in the Hangout. It's that we're...
Well, if not, what we could do is we could switch over to ChuBs, because we do have a question for ChuBs. Meanwhile, if that's all right.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, ChuBs, over to you. A question came in from Nick J, and he asked, why is human life sacred?
To me, human life would be sacred because if we were to take life, then we would all not be here, because it wouldn't matter. I find it sacred because I've given life to another person, and I have to tell them not to take life is the most precious thing, because we exist, we're here, that's us. So if there was nothing to it and we were to just be like animals and rape and kill, then we wouldn't be here. Everybody would be in disarray. And I think we've evolved enough to be able to tell each other what's right and wrong before we even enter the God into the picture. So sacred, everything has to be sacred. That's why rape in and of itself, you're taking what's most important to somebody away from them. And that would be my answer.
Oh, thank you for that. ChuBs, now, Edward, is Edward back?
I'm back. Sorry about that.
All right, no problem. Do you want to go ahead, James, with this? The next question?
You bet. So we didn't quite get to hear your response, Edward. I think it cut off literally while you were responding. So I just want to read, I think it's Silafrido Sarabia's super chat. So sorry, I think I mispronounced that big time the first time. Thanks for your patience. The super chat was, how does a loving Christian God hold a title of God of war or jealousy? I think you had said, I know we heard you say you'd need a reference for where God is referred to or has the title of God of war. But I think that was pretty much where we had you, the audio drop, if you want to finish your response.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you just reread the question one more time?
Yes, it's, how does a loving Christian God hold a title of God of war or jealousy?
Okay, so yeah, so what I was saying was that when we look at that word jealousy, and I don't have a reference right in front of me, looking at the Hebrew text, But when we look at that word for jealousy, we're not talking about a human jealousy. We're not talking about that kind of jealousy, but more of a desire for the person, like a man would have for his wife, that he just wants that wife to himself. He wants to show his affection to her. He doesn't want her to share herself with anyone else. So that's what it means of jealousy, not necessarily like like a worldly type of jealousy where a man is envious or insecure about something. I don't think that that's what it's referring to.
Doesn't the commandment, though, say you should have no other gods before me? That's kind of a direct jealousy type statement, isn't it?
But that fits right into the definition that I just gave. It's the same thing. Like, I don't want my wife to have any husband before me, like any other men before me. Like, I want us to have a relationship one to another. And I think that's the what the scripture is referring to. That God doesn't want us to be, unfaithful to him.
But a supreme being shouldn't need to address that to us in that way, right? I mean, he doesn't need to tell us he's jealous by directly saying, hey, it's me or nothing. Like, that's just the way I look at it.
Well, Edward, you can respond to this, and we'll go straight to the next question after this, if that's all right, since we do have a few more in line.
Yeah, I don't really have a response to that. I mean, we just disagree on that.
Fair enough. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, so then to the next question. The next question we have is once again from Ian Charitier, and it is addressed to Edward. Again, I think you're going to be pretty busy in the next few minutes with all these questions targeted at you. He says, Ian Charitier says, basically asking you, have you seen any miracles? If not, is it reasonable to believe in a miracle worker? Yes,
I've seen miracles. I actually consider that I had a couple of miracles with me. I got my tire blew out on me, and I rode over the highway with and I took it to the shop, and they literally didn't screw the tire on at all. It was like I drove with my family, my wife and all my children, across the highway with the tire like not screwed on. And once we got to our destination, then the tire actually started coming off. That was absolutely amazing. And I was going over 60 miles per hour on the highway. So I think that's pretty amazing.
But if the car next to you actually crashed and no miracle happened for them, they were that bad? I mean, isn't it, like you say, subjective that happened to you? You were kind of lucky. The person next to you, if that didn't happen, that God wasn't paying attention to them, though? Is that a miracle?
Well, the thing about it is, like we could basically say that about anything. But the question was, have I seen any miracles? And I answered an affirmative with an example.
But I'm saying that's not a miracle because everybody on the planet gets lucky every once in a while. So if they don't, that doesn't make the other side a miracle. I don't think where we might not have something fall on us. That doesn't mean God didn't make that happen. That's just my viewpoint to that. That's all.
I think it's healthy. Just before you answer that, Edwards, I think it's healthy to have a response as well from ChuBs as well. But maybe we limit it to a maximum of 2 responses, and then we will go to the next question. But please answer this one, Edwards.
Oh, you want me to give a response to that?
I mean, if you do.
I don't really have a response to it. I mean, it sounds again that we just disagree on that.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, sure. Next question, James.
Actually, if you're okay to read the next one, I'm still just wrangling a couple of ones that got away from me. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. The next one comes from Tyler Durden. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. It's a question for Edward. How do you determine that Satan was not calling himself Yahweh, or that Jesus was inspiring the Bible to deceive humans? So how do you determine that? Is a question.
I'm not sure I understand. Can you just repeat it again?
Sure. So Tyler's question is, how do you determine that, basically Satan was not calling himself God, or that Jesus is basically, an evil entity inspiring the Bible to deceive humans. How do you know that's not the case?
Well, I have a couple of responses to that. So number one, when we look at a claim, we don't automatically reject it as being false. Like, when we deal with people on an everyday basis, we basically give them the reasonable doubt. We say, okay, this person is believable unless they disqualify themselves because they are a liar, for one, or the claim itself is absurd, and it just um, is not believable. So, I mean, in terms of the believability of Jesus Christ, um, according to the witnesses, according to those who walk with him, and their record was that he didn't lie, and that that there was no sin found in him. So there's no reason for me not to believe his account or his testimony.
ChuBs, you want to respond to that?
I would just say that I recall a story in the Bible that Jesus killed another kid and brought him back to life, and I would consider that a sin. And to say the people who walked with Jesus, if that's the case, fine, but that's like saying that when you catch a fish, it gets bigger every time. So of course his friends are gonna say the right thing, but that's just my view.
Do you want to respond to that, Edwards?
I mean, that's fallacious reasoning. First of all, it's a genetic fallacy. Like, who cares if they're his friends? I mean, that's where the claim is coming from, doesn't speak to the validity of the claim. Just because my mother said something about me that's nice doesn't mean that it's not true. And then the other thing that he says, something about selling the character of Jesus. I forget exactly what he said, but
okay. So
I don't think it was.
What he said is that there's a story in the Bible about Jesus killing another kid. So that seems.
Yeah, no, that's not true. That's not true.
Okay, you want to just have a quick response to clarify yourself, ChuBs, before we go to the next question?
I recall that being, I can't remember the exact place. It goes along where Joseph had a board that was too short and Jesus lengthened it, and he turned a bird that was clay into life. It was around those scriptures where he pushed a kid off the roof of a house. Now, again, I'm just thinking that that's just the story I heard. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But to me, even the other stories, if Jesus is doing petty miracles, that's in and of itself petty. That's my viewpoint.
Now, it just seems to me, Edwards, before you respond, I think he's citing the infancy gospel of Thomas, which is not part of the Bible. But do you have a response for that?
No, I don't have a response. I already responded. It's not in the Bible.
Okay, yeah, all right. So we'll go to the next question. James, shall I go ahead?
I have a super chat. So
right.
Want to say thank you so much to Sheepwork. Totally appreciate it. He says, observing math, biology, etc., can I draw conclusions of intelligent design since archaeologists do the same when new artifacts are found? So I think that would be for ChuBs to respond to if you'd like to, ChuBs.
They're asking if biology compared to. Can you just sum that up real quick?
Yeah, you bet. I'll quick run over it again. It's a lot, but it's he says observing math, biology, etc., or other fields. Can I draw conclusions of intelligent design since archaeologists do the same when new artifacts are found?
I would go back to everything in and of itself can have intelligent design, but nobody can, no matter what, answer the question of where it came from. If they want to choose, I don't choose a book and a story about God, but we break down in science, we see that, okay, math is the universal language. Archaeologists do find things that do have purpose and design, but the designer question only goes so far back. I hope that gets close enough to the answer for him.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And again, thanks for that super chat. Thanks for this super chat from Silafrido Sarabia. We totally appreciate it. And they ask, how do atheists believe anything? And when there's no intentionality in nature. So in other words, sorry, I worded it funny. I want to word it the way that I think they intended. So how do atheists believe anything when there's no intentionality in nature? Does communicating show intention in nature? Ergo, naturalism is false. So I think that
I would say, oh,
I think that's actually for Edward. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
We can let each of you respond if you'd like.
If they would ask me why I believe things that goes back to the whole belief in God in general, where we believe what we can see with our senses, we see what's going on. And when we're brought to God made it because of this, that, and the other, we can see that, like I said, animals in and of themselves instinctively take care of each other. And we don't tell them why they have to do it. We can't tell them how they do it, but they do it. So I believe because things are. That's my answer.
You bet. Thank you so much for that. And then I will kick it back over to Samuel to read the next question. Thanks so much, Samuel. And thank you so much for your answer, ChuBs.
Did you want me to, James, did you want me to touch that at all? That question?
If you'd like to, absolutely.
Sure. I give it a stab. So I think that goes back to Aristotle's final causes, which I do think refutes naturalism, if that was the question. I definitely think it refutes naturalism. If there's purpose in all of the things, all of the things that are around us, like the moon circling the earth and the earth going around the sun, and a heart beating and pumping blood and all of these things, then I think it points to God, and I definitely think it refutes naturalism.
Well, we do have, we're actually out of time at the moment. Do we want to end here, James, or do you want to go ahead to one more question?
I think we ought to end, just because, forgive me, I hate to do it, but I actually have a lab that I still have to do before midnight, and I'm sweating bullets. Samuel, if you'd like to, you could keep doing questions, but I definitely have to cut out at this point.
Yeah, I think the same is true for me as well. We've just hit our 20-minute. In fact, we've just gone into the 21st minute of the Q&A. So I think it would be best to end here. And I'll hand the time over to you, James, if you want to do the closing for this.
You bet. So we first want to say thanks so much to the debaters for giving their time. Basically, they're willing to get in the hot seat, and we can't express how much we appreciate that they're willing to do that and that they chose Modern Day Debate to do it. So thank you very much to you debaters, both of you. We really appreciate you being here. And next up, I want to say thanks so much for Samuel for helping co-moderate. Just to let you know, if you are new here, Samuel will hopefully be here in the future with us. He's just kind of helping out, and it's just been a serious help to me as I'm kind of juggling maybe too many balls at once, but we're going to narrow it down and make sure we're more efficient. So the next thing is, thank you so much for your questions, everybody. Totally appreciated it, as well as super chats, everything else. And just for being here, we really enjoy it. For me, this is like, I told Samuel, like, yeah, I think, you'll just have it, you'll just moderate on your own. And it was like, I was like, I don't want to leave. Like, I just really enjoy this. So it's like, it's honestly, I totally dig it. And it's hard for me to like go do something else. So want to say it's been a blast. And also we have some really awesome debates coming up. Shannon Q will be on tomorrow with Volt. So those two will be debating, as well as we've got another one on Friday and Saturday. Saturday's being a really unique one. Namely, it's going to be two leaders from the apologetics or atheist culture community, you might say. Namely, we're going to have Jim Majors, the CEO of the Atheist Republic, debating Jonathan McClatchy, the founder of the Apologetics Academy, on did Jesus resurrect from the dead. So we're very excited about that one. It's going to be a blast, and so hope you can make that one. And with that, just want to say thanks for being here and keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care, everybody.